Welcome one and all to this edition of Coffee Shop Thursday. You know, this is a very special edition. It's the Coffee Shop Thursday that is in the meteorological month of fall, but just before the calendar date of the first day of fall. Got that? Yeah. Next week it's going to be all fall. Coffee Shop Thursday, that time when you can share some of your amazing biblical knowledge with your friends at the coffee shop. And look at this, a fall mug. I have more than just Steeler mugs. That's my fall mug to celebrate. We're going to talk about the wilderness. In the wilderness, you're going to see lots of beautiful fall leaves, but in the wilderness, unfortunately, the people of Israel were having a tough time. Those people that had left Egypt, Moses is leading them to the promised land. And now, man, what a bunch of whiners. That's all they do, is they whine and they complain. And sometimes it's justified, other times it really isn't. People are just people, right? Hey, I think sometimes we're all whiners. How about when your internet goes down? How about when your Facebook doesn't get posted? Oh, that was me yesterday. Hey, we're working on it. Our lesson that I'm looking at now is the alternate reading for this week's Common Lectionary. It's continuing this story of Joseph to Moses, now Moses leading the people in the wilderness, and we come to a part in which the people truly are complaining. Now, just a little background briefly, all through the book of Exodus, the people have complained. The first complaint, I think, is kind of legitimate, where the people in the second chapter are saying, hey, here we've been enslaved. Why did we even come down here in the first place, our forebears? Now, this is several generations after Jacob had brought all his people down there at the behest of Joseph. But now the people have been enslaved, and they're suffering, and they're complaining, they're crying to the Lord, save us. And he does. He sends Moses. So you have that in the second chapter. Now you get to where they're out of Egypt, pushing their way toward the promised land. And in the 14th chapter, now the people are saying, what? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt to bury us there? Do you have to take us out in the desert to do it? Because now look, in front of them is the Red Sea, behind them are the Egyptians. And God does his mighty works of wonders, once again answering the complaints of the people. And they cross the sea, Egyptians come after them, waters come back on the Egyptians, they're all drowned. End of story. Well, almost the end of the story, because they go on to complain again. Now it's the next chapter in Exodus, chapter 15, and this water that you brought us out to drink, it's horrible, it's terrible. It's bitter. You can't drink it. It's probably poisonous. So God once again provides Moses with a stick that he throws in there, and it takes away whatever impurities are in that water, and they're able to drink it. And then just down the road is another little oasis that has, 70 palm trees or something like that, or 70 wells. I can't remember which was which, but there they are, and they get to camp out there and relax for a while. But the griping and groaning continues. Now we're in the next chapter, chapter 16 of Exodus, and the people are complaining to Moses, you know what? We could have died back in Egypt. At least we would have had full bellies back then, which wasn't true. But at least they're saying, hey, at least we had some bread to eat there. We could make our own bread. Out here, nothing. We've run out of food. Now we're going to starve to death. All right. So Moses talks to God. God answers their complaints, and here's how he does it. In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. So we see that God provided not only meat, the quail in the evening, but in the morning, the bread. These stories that we are reading are stories, this one and the other ones, that bring home the point. Well, actually, there's a couple points in here. First is, people do tend to grumble. Even when God is so good to them and provides them with what they need, there's always something more they want. And if God sees you need it, He will provide. So they're grumbling all the way through. But it's also the fact that God does provide. Not only do He grumble, number one, number two, He is a God of provision. He will meet our needs. These are miraculous ways that He meets their needs out there in the wilderness with, saving them from the destruction of the Egyptian army, to water, to food. We know what's kind of cool? They eat quail and bread and drink water for the next 40 years. I think I would start complaining about that after a while. Come on, can't we do a little more with this menu, God? Same thing for 40 years, but He provides. It's a neat story, and here's what you can take to the coffee shop. Are you ready? Have a little sip here. Oh, friends, do you remember when we were talking about the bread in the wilderness, the manna from heaven? Manna, that's what the Israelites called it, manna. You know what manna means? Literally, it means, what is it? That's exactly what they said when they saw this stuff on the ground. They said, what is it? They didn't know. What is it? It has its roots in both the Hebrew and the Arabic language. What is it? You read on a little further into Exodus, and you see that it makes a description that it was this fine flaky substance that had a taste of honey. It was sweet. Okay, what is it? That's what manna literally means. Kind of a cute little thing. So share that with your friends around the coffee shop. But the other thing to look at in this story, it's not only the story of people grumbling, God providing, but also it's an account that shows why we have a Sabbath rest. Now you might say, well, that's because the creation story. On the seventh day, God rested, and that is true. This talks a little bit more in depth about what we do to prepare for that day and how we prepare for that day by gathering up everything that we need on the sixth day, so that on the seventh there is no work. It is a complete day of rest. You might recall that the people were told, hey, if you gather up more than what you need on that any other days of the week, the leftovers are going to spoil. But on the sixth day, it doesn't. It stays fresh right through the seventh. Kind of a neat story, and it gives you a little hint of all the different biblical traditions that were being passed around before they were written down. And now once they're written down, they're all kind of combined into one kind of bunchy, sometimes messy bunch. And all the accounts don't 100% agree, but you have to wonder, why do they even mention this here? It's because it's one of the priestly accounts that talk about the things that we do in worship now and how we live our lives now to remember these events. Number one, we remember God's goodness at creation. And number two, we also remember God's provisions for us. So on that sixth day, make the preparations for the Sabbath, the seventh, so that you can rest, relax, and reflect on the goodness of God to us all through our lives. Well, what is it? It's manna, bread. Now eat it for the next 40 years. Hey, at least God provided. Blessings be with you. Have an awesome autumn day. Well, almost autumn.